Welcome everybody. This is the God's Final Jubilee program. I'm your host, Evangelist Dan Goodwin. Good to have you with us tonight. We're going to once again talk about the subject of the new year in Israel. Is it Tishri 1? Is it Nisan 1? The sabbatical cycles. Do they begin in spring and end in spring, or do they begin in the fall and end in the fall? This is my third program on this, so if you're tired of this, just shut it off. You don't have to watch. But I'm going to try to be very brief. I do have some new information for you that I think will be exciting for you. I think I've got some more proof to share with you about why I believe Tishri 1 is in fact the new year, creation day, all the way back to Genesis, and also the beginning of the sabbatical cycle and the end of the sabbatical cycle. All right, so with that in mind, let's jump right into things here, and we'll get you going here, and we'll help you understand this a little better. All right, let's jump right in because I want to be real brief tonight. Let me read a verse for you. In Exodus chapter 12 is the verse in question that has got people rethinking this thing, and I want to try to help you with that. Exodus chapter 12 and verse 1, and the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, now this is before they left Egypt. God speaks to Moses and Aaron in the land, in Egypt, saying, verse 2, this month. Now what month is that? We know that that's the month called, many call it the month of Nisan. The Bible actually calls it the month Abib because of the fact of the barley. The barley is in the Abib stage, so it's called the month of Abib. No question about when that is. All right. Now it is called Nisan a couple times in the book of Esther and the book of Nehemiah because they're out of their land. And by the way, I am on Facebook Live. Those of you who are going to be watching on YouTube, you're not on Facebook Live, but I wanted you to know that when I look over here, I've got Facebook Live going on. I have some chat going on. I got folks who are on here watching live. And I want to invite you to go to my website, godsfinaljubilee.com. And on there, you can find my Facebook page. And I'm talking about the God's Final Jubilee page. The God's Final Jubilee page, you ought to click like on that, and you'll be able to follow many things that I share on Facebook going on in the world. And I also share live streams that you would like to get involved in, get to see live, you get to comment. There's several folks commenting here. We got folks from Texas, got someone from Malaysia, New Mexico, all over the place. So, and there's quite a few folks that are watching. There'll be hundreds that will watch the video there. And of course, hundreds will watch on YouTube. So I wanted to let you know about that. So we do got some folks here. And I may read a comment or a question from time to time. We'll just see how it goes. All right. But in verse 2, this month, the month Nisan or Abib in the spring, right, shall be unto you the beginning of months. Shall be unto you. Now, what does that mean? Now, there's an argument going on. And by the way, why am I discussing this again? Because online, on the internet, there is story after story after story, YouTube video after YouTube video after YouTube video discussing why Nisan or April is New Year's and the end of the Jubilee. And I want to just throw water on that. That is not so, my friend. Spring is not the end of the Jubilee. Nisan, Abib, the spring month, Passover month, is not the end of the sabbatical cycle or the Jubilee cycle. If we're in a Jubilee, we may be, we don't know that for sure, but if we are, that cycle does not end in this coming Passover month. It ends in the fall. And I'm gonna prove that again. I believe if you go back to my last video, I think you'll get a lot of things there. I'm not going to show any slides this time. I'm not going to put the calendar up there like I did. Go back and watch the last video, and I put up the calendars, the two calendars in Israel, and some of the confusion there. And but we're not going to do that on this one. Brother Tom Cahoon, good to see you. We are live. Tom Cahoon's asking if we're live. Yes, Brother Tom, we are live. Good to have you with us. He's from Evansville, Indiana. Pray for him in Evansville, Indiana. Amen. That's a mission field over there. All right. This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. Now, notice the confusion that we're getting here. is that people are saying that that this is God is reminding them when New Year is. I disagree with that. I do not see how you pull that out of this text. God is not saying here that from now on, God is not saying, look, I want you to get back to the original New Year's and here it is. No, when you read this text, if you haven't been influenced by somebody's book or somebody's YouTube video, it is pretty obvious when you read this that this is a change. This is a change. God is saying, hey, hold everything. From now on, I want this to be month number 1 for you. Do you get that? So be careful. Be careful about the hype and all the stuff going on. They're trying to get us to think that this is not a change. This is God taking them back to what it originally was. No, sir. No, sir. That is not true. Tishri 1, I believe, is Creation Day. And I'm not alone. I mean, Josephus, I could start naming old timers way back there. And I believe Tishri 1, and that's what, by the way, Tishri 1 is Rosh Hashanah. Feast of Trumpets. What does Rosh Hashanah mean? Head of the year. It's New Year's. All right, so this month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. To you. All right? So what was it before that? I believe it was Tishri, which is now month number 7. By the way, I'm getting ahead of myself, but did you know that month number 7 now is the month of Tishri, and that's the month that trumpets is in, and Day of Atonement? That's the rapture and the second coming of Christ will be in that month. Isn't it interesting? And when God reset the calendar here, month number 7, that important number 7, becomes the end of it all. It's not only is it the end of it all, it's also takes us back to where it all began, Genesis 1. That's how you get a perfect 6,000 year era. You want to know the end? Isaiah 46 tells us. You want to know the end? Go back to the beginning. He telleth the end from the beginning. Right? I think it's Isaiah 46 verse 10. And so here's the verse in question, or one of them. Now let me have you bear with me here. I want to read a couple other verses here. Deuteronomy. Let's turn over to Deuteronomy. This is after the Exodus, after they leave Egypt. Deuteronomy has something to say about the sabbatical cycles and the timing of them and the release date and all that. Deuteronomy, let's just go to verse chapter 15, if I can get there. Pages don't want to cooperate here. Deuteronomy 15, I can't get these pages to cooperate. Come on, there we go. All right, chapter 15, verses 1. At the end of every 7 years. Now, you know what that is. At the end of every 7 years, that's the 7-year sabbatical cycle. Remember, there's a 7-day Sabbath. Sabbath is on Saturday, the 7th day. There's a 7-year Sabbath. Every 7 years is a Sabbath where they let the land rest. And then every 49 years, or 7 times 7 years is 49 years, is a Jubilee. Now, those Sabbaths of years and the Jubilee are consecutive. Look, you don't get to the 49th year and then God changes the system and the release date and all that. They stay the same. For 50 years, the release date is always the same. All the way through the 7th sabbatical cycle and right into the Jubilee. It's the same. All right. At the end of the 7 years, thou shalt make a release. And this is the manner of the release. Every creditor that lendeth aught unto his neighbor shall release it. And you know what that's talking about, releasing the debt. All debt is forgiven on that day. All right. And when is this release date? It's at the end of the 7 years. The question is, when is the end of the 7 years? Is it Nisan 1 or is it Tishri? I'm going to tell you that the Bible tells us when it is. Let me turn the page here, go to Deuteronomy 31. Deuteronomy 31, I believe this. I believe the sabbatical cycles and the Jubilee go from, not from spring to spring, but from autumn to autumn or fall to fall. And I'm going to show you that. I wrote something down here. Where did I write that? I wrote something somewhere on the back of a paper. I was going to read to you. Ah, here it is. Why is this important? What's the big deal about whether it's Nisan or Tishri or when the sabbatical cycles and beginning and end? What's the big deal about this? Three things. Number one, because the truth is important. Is that right? The truth is important, right? Number two, because it is a great prophetic key to our understanding of end-time events. Understanding of the sabbatical cycles and the Jubilee cycles is a huge key to understanding prophetic timelines. It's very important. God put all this in the Bible. This Jubilee and the sabbatical years are there for a reason. They're not just there so people can get their debts forgiven and all that. There are prophetic and truth. There are principles there to teach us things. And number 3, because God's not the author of confusion. And right now, what have we got on the internet? Confusion. Just like we did back with the Revelation 12 thing and all the confusion over that. And boy, I got blasted for trying to help people understand that. What I believe is the truth of that. Here we go again, confusion. All of a sudden, nobody knows when New Year is. All of a sudden, nobody understands when the Jubilee begins and ends. Oh, everybody understood a year ago. All of a sudden now, somebody put something on the internet and then 20 other people do videos on it, and the whole internet's full of confusion. Confusion. All right, I'm looking to see if there's any comments over here. If you have a comment or a question, go ahead and feel free to share on Facebook there, and I'll answer it live and record it here on the YouTube video. But let's see. I got something I got off a guy here that said, let's see. He said, Exodus 12, you are now to begin your calendar with the month of Nisan. Okay, we understand that. By the way, what happened in Exodus 12? God was starting brand new with Israel. God was leading them out of Egypt and going to take them to the promised land. They were going to become the nation of Israel in the promised land and get a temple and all that. This was a new beginning for them. That's why God said, from now on, this shall be your first month. In other words, this is the first month of your new beginning. What's so hard to understand? He didn't say this is your first month in your first year, your first month since creation. He didn't say, look, this is New Year's from creation. He didn't change New Year's. You can't change your birth date. What he said was, this isn't your birthday. This is your birth date as the nation of Israel that's going to go to the promised land. This is your new beginning. Your 400 years in Egypt is over. This is a new beginning for you. Start here. And isn't it wonderful and amazing how God works that the 7th month, see, the biblical calendar is 12 months, but basically the whole biblical calendar takes place in 7 months, from the month Nisan or Abib to the month Tishri. The world will be 7,000 years. There's 7 months on their calendar. That their agricultural feast calendar. There are 7 feasts. They take place in a 7-month period of time from Nisan to Tishri. Isn't it interesting that God changed their first month to Nisan? He didn't change New Year's to Nisan. He changed their first month, which means at the end, at Feast of Trumpets, the Day of Atonement, which is Christ coming back to set up the kingdom, is in their 7th month, the completion. And also New Year's, all the way back to Genesis 1, a perfect 6,000-year earth right to the day. All right, there's nothing hard about this, right? It's celebrated. Okay, there was something else here. The sabbatical year, which is every 7th year in the 49-year cycle. Let's see, there was something else I was going to read. I'm not sure where that went. Here it is. But Tishri is the turn of the year. Exodus 34:22. We gave you that last week on the last video. Exodus 34. I'll go ahead and read that real quick for you. Exodus 34 is the turn of the year. Let's see. Now some are saying that that's talking about the seasons. No, it's talking about New Year. Exodus 34 verse 22. This is an important verse for you to get down if you're struggling with this. And thou shalt observe the Feast of Weeks, that's Pentecost, of the first fruit of the wheat harvest, Pentecost, and the Feast of Ingathering. What's Ingathering? You check it out all through the Bible. The Feast of Ingathering is Feast of Tabernacles, the fruit harvest at the end of the seventh month, at the end, right? And it says at the year's end, at the year's end. So when's the end of the year? It's not Nisan. It doesn't go from Nisan to Nisan. The end of the year is in the fall. Why? Because he's talking about New Year. He's not talking about their agricultural spiritual calendar. He's talking about the end of the year is New Year, Rosh Hashanah. And it's in the month of ingathering. There's no denying that, my friend. It's in the month of Ingan. Now what they're saying now is, well, that end of the year is not talking about the end of the year. One guy said, well, in the original Hebrew, here's what that really meant. Well, you know what? I just happen to think God inspired His Word and preserved it in the English language. I just happen to believe that my King James Bible is the perfect preserved Word of God. And I get a little tired sometimes of everybody telling me that that it doesn't mean that really, because in the original it means something else. So don't get me going on that. We'll be here all night. But listen, the Bible says at the end of the year here, during the Feast of Ingathering, Feast of Tabernacles is at the end of the year. End of what year? End of the year from creation, New Year's. All right, I don't see what's so hard about it. Now, one more, Deuteronomy chapter 31. This is irrefutable. Irrefutable. If you don't get anything else I said tonight, get Deuteronomy 31 and look it up. And in verse 10, now you can read the whole chapter, but we haven't even looked at Leviticus 25 yet. Leviticus 25 shows us the entire cycle of the sabbatical cycles all the way to Jubilee. Jumps right into the Jubilee cycle in the 49th year. And all right, verse 10, Deuteronomy 31, verse 10. How are we doing on time? We got 4 minutes left. Verse 10, I missed it. I'm on the wrong page. I got another page here and I can't get it. These pages are not wanting to cooperate in this Bible. I got to quit using this one. All right. Verse 9, Moses wrote this law and delivered it unto the priests, the sons of Levi, which bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and unto all the elders of Israel. Deuteronomy 31, now verse 10. Don't miss this. This is it. You can't refute this. And Moses commanded them, saying, at the end of every 7 years. Now what's that talking about? The sabbatical cycle. At the end of the sabbatical cycle, not the beginning of the sabbatical cycle, at the entire year's end of that cycle, right? In the solemnity of the year of release. What's that mean? That's the time that all debt's forgiven. The release date, right? You understand that? That's simple. At the end of the year, at the end of the 7th year, in the release date, look what it says, comma, in the Feast of Tabernacles. Now that's plain as day. What is he saying? He's giving us perfect proof here of what month he's talking about. What month is Feast of Tabernacles? It's not the month of Nisan. It's not their first month of the year on the agricultural spiritual feast calendar. It's the new year of Tishri on the civil New Year calendar that goes all the way back to Genesis 1. That's as plain as day. You cannot refute that, my friend. You can read the whole passage. You can't refute that. He says very plainly here, at the end of the 7 years, in the solemnity of the year of release, in the Feast of Tabernacles, when all Israel's come to appear before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose, thou shalt read this law before all Israel in their hearing. The release date is what? It's Tishri. My friend, the 7-year sabbatical cycle goes from Tishri to Tishri. It does not go from spring to spring. Now let me share one more thing with you. I spent some time this weekend with some farmers down in Missouri. I found out I found out some things, or I got other people to agree with me. I found out that what I had been saying is the truth. Did you know that the harvest does not begin in the spring? So that's one of their arguments. Beginnings are in the spring, harvest is in the spring. That's not true. Now, there are many crops planted in the spring, but did you know that the first crop in Israel is not planted in the spring, but all the way back to the fall of the year before? In other words, when the harvest ends at Tabernacles, they brought all the fruit harvest in, and Tabernacles is over, the month is fall, and that winter's coming shortly thereafter. Do you know what they do? They plant their barley and their wheat, either in September, October, maybe even November. Sometime before the snow comes, sometime before the ground freezes, they plant their seeds for the barley and the wheat. Do you understand that barley is the first crop of Israel way back in the month of March, April, somewhere in there? For Passover, there has to be barley. So the barley has to be ready before Passover. In fact, Abib means that the barley is within 7 to 11 days of harvest. So the barley's got to be Abib somewhere before the first the first of that month. And it's got to be ready. My granddaughter's over there bothering. I'm on TV here to go on out. Here, come here. You want to get on for a second? This is my beautiful granddaughter, Taterbug, and we love her. And she just got back and wanted to say hello. So hey, say hello.
Hi.
Say goodbye.
No.
All right, so let me finish this. All right, because you're on Facebook. And all right, here we go. So they would plant the barley and the wheat at the end of the harvest. In the month Tishri, or later, before the snow came, before the ground freezes, they would plant that wheat and barley so that it would be ready in the spring. It's already there. In fact, right now, in Missouri, do you know what's coming up? The wheat. They call it the winter wheat. Why is it called the winter wheat? It's called the winter wheat because it was planted in the winter. It was planted either late fall or winter, somewhere in there. They call it the winter wheat. And it's already green. In fact, it was about this tall. I saw it. Every June we go down to Missouri for camp meetings, or we used to anyway. And in June they'd be burning the wheat fields, which means they harvested it, and then later on the stubble that's still there, they'd burn it off. And when was that planted? It was planted in the late fall the year before. So you understand the planting season it doesn't go from spring to spring. It goes from fall to fall. You see, we miss so much in the Bible because we don't understand farming. You've got to understand farming to understand these things. When is the planting and harvesting beginning and end in Israel? Tishri to Tishri. Somewhere in late Tishri, they'd be planting that wheat and that barley. And the barley, of course, matures first, and then a couple months later, the wheat is ready. And so when planting, sowing in Israel is not from spring to spring. It's from fall to fall. Now, of course, there is things that are planted in the spring. I'm not saying that there's not. I'm saying that the planting begins in the fall and ends in the fall. And so on the 6th year of the sabbatical cycle, they would be harvesting on Feast of Tabernacles in the month of Tishri. They're harvesting the last of the crop. The fruit harvest is being brought in. At the end of that 6th year, guess what? They would not be planting, after Tabernacles, they would not be planting the barley and the wheat. Why? Because now it's the beginning of the 7th year. And the 7th year begins right there in Tishri. And so that's where the land would lie rest. Let me read one more verse and I'll let you go. Leviticus chapter 25. I want to make sure you understand the Jubilee works the same way. Exact same way. Leviticus chapter 25, verse 9. Then shalt thou cause the trumpet of the Jubilee. Of course, verse 8 says, after the 49th year, after 7 of these sabbatical cycles of years, in the 49th year, after the 49th year ends, when does it end? All right, you got this? When does it end? It ends in the fall. The sabbatical cycle ends in the fall. When that 49th year ends in the sabbatical cycle in the fall, in Tishri, what happens next? On the 10th day of Tishri, on Day of Atonement, verse 9, thou shalt cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month. That's Tishri. And if you're not sure about that, he goes on and says, in the Day of Atonement. When's Atonement? The 10th day of Tishri. It's the 6th feast, Tabernacles being the 7th feast. Thou shalt make the trumpet of the Jubilee sound throughout all thy land, and you shall herald the 50th year, and proclaim liberty. When's the 50th year? They just started the 50th year on Tishri 1, but on the 10th is when the trumpet is blown. It's the 49th year, but it's actually the beginning 10 days later of the 50th year. And this is the beginning of Jubilee, and it goes for a whole year, the 50th year. When does the 50th year end? All the way back to Tishri 1. Almost 360 days later, right? Right to the day, all right? What's so hard about that? What's so hard about this? What's all the confusion about? Listen, folks, go study these things. These are important things. God's not the author of confusion. These are, look, one guy wrote me and he says that the sounding of the trumpet of the Jubilee here is not the beginning of Jubilee. He says Jubilee begins in April, in the month of Nisan. And 6 months, 7 months later, on this Jubilee day, or on this Day of Atonement, the trumpet is blown, not to announce the beginning. He says the Jubilee's been going on for 6 or 7 months already. My friend, that's not right. That's not true. That's not what this says. This says, sound the trumpet and proclaim liberty. This is the beginning of Jubilee in Tishri. So when does Jubilee end? Tishri, a year later, the end of the 50th year. Listen, this is not rocket science. This is simple mathematics. This is simple Bible discernment here. I've had to do 3 videos now. I think, and some people are not going to be convinced. I realize that. If you're not going to be convinced, okay. But I want my crowd. I want the folks that follow my videos and follow my Facebook page and read my books. I want you to understand the simplicity of this. And all right, well, it's been a blessing being with you today on the program. And I'm glad that you got to share, and hope that you gleaned something. And we want to be a help to you. That's what it's all about. Time is running out. One of these days, Jesus is going to split the sky. And we're going to be caught up. We're going to be called out of here. There'll be no time to change your mind then, my friend. You best be born again. You better make sure you know the Lord, because when that trumpet sounds, we're going out of here. And it'll be too late. I wish we'd all been ready. We need to be ready. This is the God's Final Jubilee program. And we'll see you again next time, this same place. Remember the website, godsfinaljubilee.com. Be sure and check out the Facebook page. Make sure you subscribe, if you haven't, to the YouTube channel. We'll see you next time.